All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jesse Gabriel, and I'm very proud to represent the San Fernando Valley in the California State Legislature. And I'm honored to be joined today by several distinguished experts in health, medicine, and food safety. Each of us are going to provide some introductory remarks, and then we'll open it up for questions. And if you have questions, you can use the question feature here in the Zoom, and I will be able to read those questions and then direct them to each of the speakers as appropriate. In recent years, doctors and scientists have increasingly warned us about the negative health consequences of ultra-processed foods. These products are often filled with harmful additives and specifically engineered to interfere with our brain signals in ways that can contribute to food addiction. Americans are among the world's biggest consumers of ultra-processed foods, and we are paying the price for it, both in terms of our declining health and our rapidly rising healthcare costs. The science is clear. Ultra-processed foods have been linked to serious health harms, including cancer, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, metabolic disorders, reproductive harm, and neurobehavioral issues in children. 73% of U.S. adults are overweight or obese, and 38% of American children are pre-diabetic. Consumption of ultra-processed foods is a leading driver of poor health outcomes and rising healthcare costs. But today, Democrats and Republicans in California are joining forces to protect our children. We are proud to announce Assembly Bill 1264, first in the nation, bipartisan legislation that would phase out particularly harmful ultra-processed foods from school meals in the state of California by 2032. This proposal is based on the common sense premise that our public schools should not be serving students ultra-processed food products that can harm their physical or mental health or interfere with their ability to learn. AB 1264 would achieve this goal in two simple steps. First, it would establish a first ever statutory definition of what qualifies as an ultra-processed food. And second, it would direct state scientists working in cooperation with leading experts from the University of California to identify a subcategory of particularly harmful ultra-processed foods that should be phased out of school meals. State scientists would be charged with determining whether a product meets that definition by considering several factors, including whether the product includes additives that are banned or restricted in other jurisdictions, whether the products or ingredients have been linked to harms such as cancer, cardiovascular disease, or metabolic disease, whether the product has been shown to contribute to food addiction, and whether it has excessive fat, sugar, or salt. This approach would be guided by science, and it will give parents confidence that kids are being served the healthy, nutritious meals they need and deserve. Now, let me offer a few final thoughts. AB 1264 continues California's national leadership on food safety and school nutrition. Last session, I authored and Governor Newsom signed into law two first-in-the-nation proposals, the California Food Safety Act and the California School Food Safety Act, which ban the use of certain dangerous chemicals in synthetic food dyes in school meals. These reforms have inspired nationwide changes, with the FDA subsequently banning two of the chemicals from the California Food Safety Act and more than 20 other states introducing versions of this legislation. Our success in passing these bills was driven by an approach grounded in science, common sense, and a firm commitment to bipartisanship. And we are continuing to rely on that formula with AB 1264. We are proud that this bill is co-authored by an extremely diverse group of legislators from across the political and ideological spectrum, including Assembly Republican Caucus Leader James Gallagher and Progressive Caucus Chair Alex Lee. Protecting our kids from harm is, and always should be, a bipartisan issue. This bill also leverages California's unique size and strength to advance change. This year, California is projected to serve over 1 billion school meals. So changing what we serve in our public schools is an incredibly powerful way that we can make a difference in our children's physical and mental health. And it also gives us market power. We hope that this bill will inspire food companies to tweak their recipes and remove unnecessary harmful additives so that they can continue to access this enormous market. Finally, we also view this as an important equity issue. This legislation will help ensure that students, including those from disadvantaged backgrounds, can access healthy and nutritious foods. To close, let me offer the following. For too long, the United States has been a global outlier in food safety. We have lagged too far behind many other countries on Earth. As I learned more about food and nutrition over the past few years, it has made absolutely no sense to me that foods in the US are filled with chemical additives that are banned in dozens of other nations around the world. And it has made me mad that manufacturers are making safer and healthier versions of the same products in other countries while marketing the dangerous and unhealthy versions to our kids here in the United States. And that's why we are pushing for this agenda in California and leading the nation. We have shown here in California that we will put politics aside and stand up for the health and safety of our kids. And that's what we're going to do again with Assembly Bill 1264. And with that, let me introduce a leading expert in this field, Dr. Michael Gorn.
Thank you very much, Jesse, and good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Gorn. I'm a professor of pediatrics and I'm vice chair for research in the Department of Pediatrics at Children's Hospital Los Angeles. And this is affiliated with the Keck School of Medicine at the University of Southern California. Also, I'm program director for nutrition and obesity at the Children's Hospital Los Angeles and director of the Southern California Center for Latino Health. I have directed research in childhood nutrition and the causes and consequences of childhood obesity and related metabolic diseases for over 35 years. This research has been continuously funded by more than $80 million from the National Institutes of Health and has led to more than 400 peer-reviewed publications. Over the last several decades, we have witnessed a steady increase in childhood obesity, especially among more vulnerable segments of the population. For example, children from low-income families are at higher risk. Latino families and Black families are at higher risk. Although the national prevalence of childhood obesity is often quoted to be in the range of 20%, we see much higher levels, closer to 40% and higher sometimes in lower income families or families living in high-risk environments, who are the families who are most dependent on healthy school meals. Obesity-related diseases like type 2 diabetes and fatty liver disease were once thought of as an adult disease. And when I started my research, they weren't even mentioned as problems among children. But now they are increasing among younger children with a younger age of onset and a more accelerated trajectory of disease progression than we see in adults. Some children will develop these conditions during childhood or else face a greater likelihood of developing them later in life. And these conditions that I mentioned are all preventable. Prior studies in the US, Canada, Europe, and around the world have consistently shown that children are consuming more and more and a growing portion of their daily food as ultra-processed foods. And at the same time, the evidence linking consumption of ultra-processed foods to higher risk of obesity, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, heart disease is compelling. In addition to these chronic diseases, studies have also shown an association between ultra-processed foods and brain health in children, including higher anxiety and depression, and alarmingly, an association with compromised academic test scores among school children. The etiology of obesity and metabolic disease development, it's complex. There's multiple levels of influential factors like income, access to healthy food, and even environmental exposure, among others. Some of these factors are well beyond the control of policymakers, but the quality of school foods, including the prevalence of ultra-processed foods, is a significant factor that we can modify and should be addressed. For too long, when considering the impact of nutrition on health, we have focused on single nutrients, for example, sugar and fat. However, we do not consume single nutrients, we consume meals. For example, we can debate whether consuming butter is good or bad for our health, but if we use a small amount of butter to stir-fry fresh vegetables, then we have created the basis of a healthy meal. Compare this, for example, with a frozen box of processed stir-fried vegetables that might also include numerous chemical additives, stabilizers, or taste enhancers. It might come with a ready pack of sauce containing other additives and excess sugars and seed oils. If our policies were focused just on limiting the sugars or individual ingredients, then food companies would surely identify other replacement chemicals like alternative sweeteners that themselves may have health-damaging effects, and we have not addressed the overall impact of the meal. This is why we need policies like AB 1264 to address the overall health quality of school meals in a holistic way, rather than continuing to focus single ingredients. In summary, I've studied this issue for over 30 years. It's a complex problem. We know that what kids eat affects their current and future health, their development, their learning ability, and their overall well-being. We need to move beyond our prior focus on single nutrients and ingredients and consider a more holistic approach that relates to the overall health and nutrient quality of whole meals and move from our reliance on prepackaged, highly processed foods to foods that have a closer resemblance to whole foods and have been produced with minimal processing and alterations to their natural taste and state. Nutrition provided by schools should promote a healthy development, but instead, school nutrition can seriously compromise healthy development. Schools can and should be better partners with parents and caregivers who are seeking to support healthier nutrition at home. Overall, this is why I applaud and wholeheartedly support AB 1264 and the leadership of Assemblymember Gabriel's leadership and efforts to improve school nutrition and child health. Thank you very much, and I now turn this over to my colleague, Dr. Ashley Gerhardt. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you all here today. I'm Ashley Gerhardt, a professor of psychology at the University of Michigan, a licensed therapist, and a director of the Food and Addiction Science and Treatment Lab. I've published over 190 peer-reviewed studies, and I have testified to both the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives on the science of ultra-processed food addiction. At this point, hundreds of studies have found that many ultra-processed foods and beverages aren't just unhealthy, but they're also addictive. These products stimulate the brain's reward system, making them almost irresistible and driving consumers to keep coming back for more and more. This is good for business, but bad for the health of Americans. Ultra-processed foods and beverages are now the major source of calories for most children in the United States. This is a key contributor to the unprecedented levels of obesity, diabetes, and diet-related disease in our children. We've been here before. Big Tobacco didn't just sell cigarettes, it engineered them for addiction and targeted children in their marketing. And when the pressure mounted, those same companies pivoted by buying up ultra-processed food and beverage companies. They applied the tactics they developed to sell cigarettes to our nation's food supply. The result is ultra-processed foods and beverages designed to hit bliss points and maximize craveability. The industry even put flavor additives used in cigarettes into children's sugar-sweetened beverages. Today, these ultra-processed foods and beverages dominate school cafeterias, lunch boxes, and grocery aisles, and are the main products advertised to children. The impact has been staggering. Nearly 1 in 7 adults and 1 in 8 children show signs of addiction in their ultra-processed food and beverage intake. This has been linked with obesity, diabetes, and mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, and ADHD. Children's brains are more vulnerable to the harms of addictive substances, which is why we as a society try to protect them from exposure to these products. Yet we have not done enough to protect them from ultra-processed foods and beverages that have far more in common with a cigarette than they do a fruit or vegetable. If we're serious about protecting Americans' children, we need to treat ultra-processed foods and beverages like the public health threat they are. That means getting them out of schools, holding corporations accountable, and prioritizing real, nourishing food for our kids. AB 1264 is a courageous step forward in achieving this goal and promoting the health of California's children. I'll now turn this over to Nora LaTorre.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Nora LaTorre, the CEO of Eat Real, which is an award-winning children's health and planet health nonprofit upgrading the U.S. food system at scale. I'm a board member, trusted advisor, public health thought leader, and speaker at top conferences with the media and on podcasts. As a top expert on all things children's health and school food, I'm so happy to be here today. At Eat Real, we work directly with the public schools in California and nationwide to improve the nutrition of school meals. We're on track to reach 1 million kids in 20 states nationwide this year. We see firsthand how the school cafeteria can change the future. Did you know, fun fact, that schools are the largest restaurant chain in America? Public schools have more locations than Subway, Starbucks, and McDonald's combined, and they serve the most important customers, our kids. Let Eat Real, our K through 12 certification program, assesses and helps school districts remove ultra-processed food items from their menus, replacing those items with minimally processed and locally sourced scratch-cooked foods. In California, we work across the state with 18 school districts reaching 508 schools and over 330,000 students. Our work is successfully proving not only that it's possible to feed our kids nutritious, delicious, locally sourced school meals, but that kids actually prefer them. Teachers, parents, and children are all happier because of real school food meals. Not only that, but our school program has shown that it's a better business model for school cafeterias to serve real food. Schools can provide higher quality items and the economics work out. Better food can equal more students participating, and as a result, school food income can increase so that schools can reinvest. So here's why healthy school meals are so important. Nearly half of American children depend on school meals. 30 million children nationwide rely on school meals for approximately 50% or more of their calories. School meals are the core calories, as we heard from Dr. Gorin, for our underserved youth. Our kids are getting sicker sooner. You've already heard the health threats posed by ultra-processed foods, but the link between these diseases, type 2 diabetes, obesity, fatty liver disease, mental health issues like anxiety and ADHD, and ultra-processed food consumption is so clear that they're beginning to be called ultra-processed food-related diseases. What's worse is these preventable diseases are all showing up in children in a way that they have never before. And as a mom, this is particularly concerning. Today in America, 67% of calories consumed by our children are ultra-processed calories. And kids eat more than a bathtub of added sugar per year. Ultra-processed food is failing our children. And we believe that healthy meals change the future for our kids. There is extensive research, as we've heard, that show that as you improve children's food nutrition, you improve their futures. The more real food kids consume, the better their focus, test scores, behavior, mental health, sports performance, academic achievements, and long-term ability to achieve their dreams. Together, California public schools serve almost over actually 1 billion meals a year. With proper funding and high nutrition standards that bills like this represent, public schools can be the best restaurant in town. Local, real school food creates a stronger California. Consider what could replace ultra-processed foods in school meals. Minimally processed, real food items from local vendors, seasonal produce from local farmers, regeneratively raised proteins. When schools to redirect their businesses to local producers and suppliers, the local economy supporting the families of their students thrive. When students enjoy real food at school and become healthier, we can stop disease before it starts. In California, we spend hundreds of billions of dollars every year on preventable ultra-processed food-related diseases. And now they're testing Ozempic on 6-year-olds, which is very expensive. We can cut healthcare costs quickly by raising the bar for school food. This bill can help save the state money in the short term and the long term. Higher nutrition standards with more reinvestment in school food has a proven ROI for our children's health, our local economy, and the health of our nation. Thank you for reimagining what school food can look like with the health of our children and our communities at the center. Strong leadership is essential across the aisle to create strong outcomes for the next generation. Healthy school meals are the fastest, most powerful way to create a healthier future for our children and our nation. Eat Real is proud to support Assemblymember Gabriel's AB 1264. We applaud his ongoing work to improve school nutrition and his bold leadership. Thank you. And I'm so happy to pass over the mic to Scott Faber, the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs at the Environmental Working Group. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nora. I'm Scott Faber. As Nora said, I'm with EWG. And before I joined EWG, I was the head of federal affairs for the Food Industries Trade Association. I'm also an adjunct law professor at Georgetown Law School, where I teach food and farm law. Let me just say a few quick things, because I know we're short on time. States have led the way when it comes to the safety and health of our food, and no state has done more than California. California has been our nation's food policy leader, And Assemblymember Gabriel has been our California food policy leader in 2023. You led efforts to ban 4 toxic food chemicals from our foods, making California the first in the nation to do so. Last year, you led efforts to ban toxic food colors from California's school foods, again, setting a national precedent. Thanks to your leadership, now other states are following California's lead. Today, with AB 1264, California will be leading again by seeking to enact the first ever definition of UPFs and identifying the particularly harmful UPFs that should not be offered for sale at schools. We know UPFs are harmful. We know they are designed to make our foods nearly irresistible, not just delicious. But until AB 1264, no legislative body has sought to create a workable legal definition that both supports healthy diets, but can also be used by our food companies, our school food professionals, and others to help us feed our kids the foods they deserve. So thank you, Assemblymember Gabriel, for once again making our kids your top priority. And I will turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Scott, for your kind words. Thank you to all of our distinguished speakers. We are just so grateful for the support of these leading advocates, these leading research scientists, these thought leaders, people who have devoted their careers to studying these issues, to understanding these issues, to following the science, and to advocating on behalf of children. And that is exactly what we are doing here in the state of California. We are going to follow the same example of a science-based, common sense, bipartisan approach to protecting our kids. And we're really proud that this bill will hopefully be a big step forward in doing that and creating some better pathways that will serve all of our kids and all of our communities. And as I've talked about before with many of you, I come to this work first and foremost as a dad, as a parent of 3 young kids, of my 2 older boys in public schools here in the state of California, and my little guy still in preschool, but understanding how important food and nutrition is to their health, to their well-being, to their mental health. And these are benefits that we want to bring to kids all across the state of California. So I know we gave you a lot to think about, a lot to chew on, so to speak, no pun intended, but if there are questions, we'd be happy to answer them. And if anyone has questions, you can go ahead and put them using the Q&A chat feature in the Zoom now. Okay, we have 3 questions, and I'm going to go ahead and take the first 2, and then I'll pass the third off. So the first question is, will you send out the recording of this? And and yes, if you reach out to Noah Marty on our communications team, we would be happy to share the recording with you. The second question comes from Nicole Norman at Politico, which says, what is the anticipated cost of this bill? Which is an excellent question and something I'm always mindful of in my other role as chair of the Assembly Budget Committee. So we're still working on that, and obviously that's something that the Appropriations Committee here would do an analysis on. But one of the things we're very confident of is that this is actually going to save the state of California a lot of money. When we think about what is driving some of our budget challenges here in the state of California, the rapidly increasing cost of healthcare is at the very top of the list. And you heard each of our speakers talk about all of the health challenges that ultra-processed foods are posing to both young people in real time and also later in their lives. And it's making kids sicker sooner, I think one of our speakers said, which is a sad but accurate way to put it. So we think that there's actually huge benefits and not only can we make people safer and healthier and increase their physical and mental well-being, but we can actually save a lot of money with this bill in terms of healthcare costs. And we know how rapidly they are rising here. So we will get more information of that. But at the end of the day, we think that in addition to being really good for California's kids, this is also going to be really good for California's finances. The next question is from Emma Court. It says, what kind of timeline could implementation look like with this bill? And how might scientists determine the most damaging types of ultra-processed foods? And so I'll take the first part of that, which is that if this bill, when this bill is hopefully signed into law, it's going to task state scientists at an agency called OEHHA, the Office of Environmental Health, hazard assessment that is part of the California Environmental Protection Agency that has experience doing this work. They actually were the folks that did aggregated all of the research on synthetic food dyes. That was very powerful in making the case for the California School Food Safety Act. So we will ask them to work with some of the leading research scientists at the University of California, which we're privileged to have here in our state, to publish a report for us on this subcategory of particularly harmful ultra-processed foods. Again, we are not seeking to phase out all ultra-processed foods from schools here in California. We're seeking to phase out those that are particularly harmful according to the criteria that I laid out. And that first report would be due on July 1st, 2026. And then they would be tasked with updating that every 2 years thereafter. We know, as both of our Dr. Gorn and Dr. Gerhardt talked about, that there's been a lot of research in this area, that it's evolving quickly. And so the more research, the more data, the more information we get, we want to be in a position to take advantage of that in shaping those standards. But really, the key deadline here is 2032, because that is the date by which schools would have to phase all of these particularly harmful ultra-processed foods out. And part of this is, in working on this issue last year, we understand that there are real issues of implementation to consider with our school districts and with manufacturers. And we want to be mindful of that. We don't want to ask schools to throw away any foods or put them in a difficult situation with contracts they've negotiated. So we're going to give them until 2032 for the research to come back and for them to phase that out. But Dr. Gerhardt, do you want to maybe jump in on how scientists determine the most damaging types of UPFs? Maybe talk a little bit about the research.
Yeah, my pleasure. So when I think of what is the most harmful, I think of it on two dimensions. One is the implications for health and doing health harms. And in this, there's been a lot of work done both using epidemiological studies, where we'll look at people's diets and follow them for decades, as well as some randomized controlled trials where people will come in and have these controlled feeding access to different types of foods. You can measure and control across all these different macronutrients, but change whether it's ultra processed or not. And so both of those types of studies have suggested that ultra processed foods do cause harm. And just like alcoholic beverages, there's a range of harm. A low alcohol beer is not the same as Bacardi 151. And this whole wheat bread is probably not the same as ice cream, potato chips, and flaming hot Cheetos. And so within this, we're really understanding that there's subsets of risk within here, with sugar sweetened beverages, reconstituted meats popping out as particularly harmful. And then in my lab, I also look at not just the health harms, but the tendency to trigger that compulsive addictive pattern of intake. The fact that you should only have the one cookie, but you end up eating the whole sleeve. And I can tell you in our work, we see that the nutritional formulation, when it's then further amplified and made inexpensive with additives, plays a huge role. The food industry knows that there are certain bliss points, combinations of refined carbs and fats that do not exist in nature, that our ultra-processed foods are chocked full of, and then they're further enhanced with all these flavor additives, and then made really cheaply so they can sit on a shelf for 3 months, and then have all that marketing on top of it. So those are some of the strategies that we're looking at.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Gerhardt. Okay, our next question is from Sophia Bolag at the San Francisco Chronicle. How will this bill interact with the governor's recent executive order on ultra-processed foods? Great question. We see this as highly complementary. We were very grateful for the governor's leadership on these issues, very grateful that he courageously signed both the California Food Safety Act and the California School Food Safety Act into law and pushed back on some of the misinformation that was out there about those bills and about this work, and gratified to see the administration step up with that executive order. And so we know that there's going to be some information and research coming back pursuant to that executive order, and if that helps to inform this legislation, then we will certainly take that into consideration. But we see these as complementary, and ultimately, I view it as a sign that there is so much energy behind this issue right now. Not only bipartisan energy, but energy from different branches of government, because everybody understands that it is good policy and good politics to be on the side of kids and families in schools. Okay, next question is from Kristen at Cal Matters. She said, there aren't many bipartisan issues these days. What generated so much support for this when previous food bills, Skittles, have been maligned by Republicans naturally? So I would say that one of the things that's been gratifying, and maybe Scott wants to speak to this as well, working on these issues over the past couple of years is to understand this evolving consciousness, particularly among parents and particularly among millennial parents. I'll speak for folks of my age about how profoundly what we feed our kids and what we put into their bodies impacts their physical health, their mental health, their ability to learn, their happiness, all of the things that our speakers have talked about. And I think that growing awareness has generated a huge amount of grassroots support for this. I hear about this issue a lot. I hear about from Democrats and Republicans in my district. They're singing from the same song sheet on this. They want their kids to be safe. They want their kids to be healthy. They want them to eat nutritious foods. And so I really think it is that evolving consciousness that has created this amazing political moment of alignment between people who otherwise don't necessarily normally see the world the same way. And I think it's an amazing thing for me that I have a bill that the Republican leader and the Progressive Caucus co-chair were both really excited to co-author, and a lot of folks in between are, moderate Democrats and moderate Republicans. So what you're seeing is people, irrespective of their disagreements on other issues, coming together and saying, you know what, this makes a lot of sense. The science here is overwhelming, and we ought to step up and protect our kids. But Scott, I don't know if you want to add anything about some of the bipartisan alignment here.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to now work in many states where Republicans and Democrats are working together to address the safety of our food. And spoiler alert, everyone thinks food should be safe, and everyone thinks that food should be nutritious. And as Republicans and Democrats both learn that these ultra-processed foods aren't nourishing our kids, but in some ways are making them sick, they all agree that it's time to find ways to discourage or restrict the presence of these foods, especially in schools where parents aren't there to intercept and help guide their children's decision making about which foods to eat. The other thing that people are seeing, regardless of party, is that change is not coming from Washington. Change is coming to Washington. Change is not coming from Washington. And despite all the pledges and proclamations that we might hear coming from Washington, the real progress that's being made is being made in places like Sacramento or Richmond, where Governor Youngkin will sign a bill this week to ban colors from school foods, or Charleston, where Governor Morrissey is expected to sign a bill to ban 9 chemicals from all foods sold in the state. So I think both parties recognize how important it is to have safe, nutritious food, and both parties recognize that the policy changes that our kids deserve are going to be coming from our state capitals, not from our national capital. The last thing I'll just say is that people are seeing that the food industry is quickly responding to laws like AB 418 and the law that Assemblymember Gabriel shepherded through the legislature last year. They see that food companies can quickly change their recipes, that they're innovative companies who can quickly change their recipes to give consumers, especially our kids, what they deserve. So I think many people are, despite protestations from food industry lobbyists, recognize that companies are really innovative. They can give us the food we all want, and indeed that we're all demanding.
Thank you, Scott. That was great. And actually tease up, we've had a couple of questions here, and I can't tell who they're from because folks aren't identifying themselves or identifying themselves as a reporter, but a couple of questions about anticipated pushback or opposition to the bill from industry or otherwise. We will look forward to those conversations. You can see that some segments of industry have opposed our prior efforts here, but we will certainly work with them and try to understand what their concerns are. But also, ultimately, we're going to be very firm in advocating on the science and advocating for the health and safety of our kids. But to pick up on what Scott just said, I mean, part of what was so eye-opening to me as I learned more about this issue over the past couple of years is so many of the products that we know and love here in the United States and that our kids love and ask us for here are made in Europe and in Latin America and in Asia, minus the harmful additives. So the companies already know what the tweak is. They already know what the substitute ingredient is. They already know what the alternative recipe is. It's not like they're going to have to go out there and do a bunch of research. It's like, no, just start using the version that you sell to kids in Sweden or Saudi Arabia or South Korea, where these additives are banned. So there is, again, there was some pushback from the food industry, but I think ultimately a lot of my colleagues, both Democrats and Republicans, were very persuaded when they understood how different the United States is than the rest of the world when it comes to a lot of these issues. And a lot of countries that we would consider to be our peers, or not even necessarily our peers, are really ahead of us when it comes to protecting their kids on these issues. We have a follow-up question from Sophia Bolag at the Chronicle. It sounds like implementation of this law will depend heavily on research at California universities. Would that work still be possible given the threatened cuts to federal higher education and research funding from the Trump administration? So we're very hopeful and going to work with our Republican and Democratic members of Congress in Washington to hopefully avoid those cuts to research, which are so critical to so many issues here in California. And I was actually pleased to lead a sign-on letter with a bipartisan sign-on letter with members of the legislature to encourage them not to make those types of cuts. But I will say, we think this is going to be eminently possible because of all of the prior research that has already been done. You heard Dr. Gerhardt and Dr. Gorn speak about how many peer-reviewed research studies are out there. I think each of them have a breathtakingly large number of papers to their name. I think Dr. Gorn's in like 400 and Dr. Gerhardt's at 190. I mean, it's really unbelievable how much evidence and data and research is already out there. So it's not like we're going to ask our state scientists to start from zero. And in fact, the work that they did, that OEHHA did on food dyes, was really just doing a survey of looking at all of the peer-reviewed research that was already out there, the studies that had been done on children, the studies that have been done on adults, and aggregating all of that. So we think the evidence is there, the data is there, the research is there, and as more research comes in, that they can continue to rely on. But again, we hope that we won't see those cuts, but we're going to be able to do this irrespective of what happens. Okay, I think we have exhausted our questions. We have one final question. Has the bill text been released? Can you share a link? The text has not yet been public, but if you reach out to Noah Marty on my team, and Noah, maybe you can put your contact information in the chat as soon as it's done. We will release the link to the text, and it's got it's heavily wonky and got a lot of cross references to the Code of Federal Regulations and other things, but we're happy to talk folks through it. And like anything else we do, it will be a work in progress. And as we have conversations with stakeholders and advocates and more experts, we will work, particularly as we're trying to do this for the first time, as we understand it, to offer the first ever statutory definition of ultra-processed food. So with that, let me thank our phenomenal speakers. We're so grateful for all the work you have done that has brought us to this moment, for the advocacy that you have done that has brought us to this moment. And we look forward to working hard to try to move this bill through the legislature. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
FoodFight USA!